And I'm going to hand things off to Wilma Franco from the Cella Collaborative. Want to kick things off for us?
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Wilma Franco. I'm the Executive Director of the Southeast LA Collaborative. We're so happy you could join us. I see a lot of people still joining. Do you want to launch the presentation, Aaron, please? Awesome. Thank you. All right, so really, our goal for today was to kind of just provide some information for you as far as some of the work that we've been engaging with a couple of partners on the Economic Resiliency Task Force. So what we'll do today is just really kind of give you an overview, provide some context, and then really kind of, our hope is to hear more from you as far as what your feedback is on the recommendations that were presented. So if you want to move to the next slide. Thank you. So just in terms of an overview of the agenda, I'll go over what is the LA County's Economic Resiliency Task Force. We wanted to make sure that everybody has that contextual piece first. I'll tell you a little bit more about the Philanthropy Nonprofit Sector Work Group. And then I'll hand it over to Regina to talk about the recommendations that were identified for LA County. And then we'll kind of wrap it up with, we're trying to allocate more time for the discussion piece. And then finally, just kind of conclude the event on next steps and what we can do moving forward. So just to kind of take a step back, we're not sure how many of you have heard about the Economic Resiliency Task Force. So on April 28th, 2020, the county supervisors established the LA Economic Resiliency Task Force. And really the goal was to leverage public-private partnerships to improve the economy, create jobs, and return to full employment. This was really, how do we kind of reignite our economy post-COVID, right? As we're kind of seeing all these challenges come. And then so the task really for the task force was to develop actionable recommendations based on the best practices for a phased recovery of the county's economy. So the task force really kind of included the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, along with 13 economic sector representatives. Aaron, if you can go to the next one. So these, 13 representatives established what we call the 13 sector work groups. So we wanted to give you just a quick overview of what those 13 work groups were, and then really kind of make sure that you were aware of those pieces. We can go to the next one. So what we are here for today is really kind of to give you a overview understanding of what the recommendations were from the Philanthropy Nonprofit Sector Work Group. So this work group was led by Regina Birdsell from the Center for Nonprofit Management. Our group actually met on a weekly basis starting May 26th, and the goal was to present recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on June 16th. So that was a 3-week window to develop recommendations. So it was a very fast, kind of process that took a lot of, commitment from the members. And if we can go to the next slide, I can, just kind of want to acknowledge all the work group members that were part of this group. We know we had a pretty vast task to complete in 3 weeks. And I think this is, our hope is to kind of give you that brief overview of what we've identified, and then also hear from you as to whether this is something that is reflective or if we've missed some information here. And if you can go to the next one. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Regina, who can go over all the recommendations.
Thanks, Wilma, and welcome everyone. It's great to see so many faces on the screen today, and also some of our partners on this working group that have been running pretty fast and hard over this time. You'll notice that part of the timeline synchronized with not only the pandemic and the economic downturn, but the uprising. So we know that all of you have plenty to do right now. And we were very excited to have the opportunity to really call out for our sector in a unique way what some of the barriers are and what some of the opportunities are for the supervisors to consider as they try to get the economy back going, and also try and think about how we can all safely deliver our services and work in communities. So with that, let's go to the first slide. So we wanted to remind the supervisors that 31% of California's poor live in our county, but 2/3 of California's budget in social services stays north of the Tehachapis. We are, and you guys should all know this, a major employer. So not just that little charitable sector, but a workforce with 10,000 nonprofit organizations. What we thought was important for the supervisors to know is that the way that public dollars are spent creates some real threats to the sustainability of some of the services that are provided through the nonprofit sector. So we wanted to call out that there was an opportunity for this kind of labor-intensive, uncoordinated contracting system to be revisited, and also to look at the reimbursement practices and schedules. And then I think lastly, the direct service organizations that were especially hard hit thanks to COVID and all the ramifications of the past couple of months. So serving brown and black communities, what we're finding is that in communities where it's mostly hourly workers, mostly renters, with lots of generations living in the house, one of the assignments for us was what's happening with COVID and what's the impact of that on your sector. So we kind of took two slices at that. First, what that meant in our community, and then what that meant to our work. So what you were telling us at that time is that you were overwhelmed, that the need for food, for shelter, for healthcare, for safety had just exploded, that in some cases 400% increase in demand. And that was the window when so many should have been hosting annual galas and runs and fund development events in the spring that suddenly were canceled, and that donations dropped very quickly. We were seeing a lot of interest in scenario planning because of what was happening with finances and revenue, and demand simultaneously was creating that kind of perfect storm. Simultaneously, you noticed that our working group was a combination of representatives from philanthropy and representatives in the social sector on the service delivery side. That was intentional to get the perspectives of both sides of that table. And at that time, they had put together $100 million very quickly in rapid response funds to really focus on current emergency needs. We also saw that organizations were reducing services, spending down reserves, furloughing staffs. Hopefully some of this sounds familiar to you, but that there are just a lot of crises that were happening simultaneously for organizations, and that you also were working remotely. What we have been tracking at CNM and shared with the group was that 25% of the organizations that we were keeping track of were preparing to close given all those pressures. So that there were some just systemic inequities that were impacting vulnerable communities, but a lot of pressure on organizations, not only to keep the clients safe, but to keep their workforce safe and to be meeting growing demand. So the next slide, please. I think we can switch. Oh wait, sorry, I think I might have passed over something here. So a couple of things about returning to work that I think some of this will sound familiar to you because it probably doesn't sound like news anymore, but at the time it really was, in terms of procuring some of the PPE. The returning to work safely was expensive, it was complicated, it's confusing. And with all of the changes that were coming down from different parts of our government, difficult for organizations how to comply with the protocols. We also knew that depending on the clients that you were serving, that in some cases it was really difficult to keep your employees or those clients safe. And that some of the returning to work issues were going to be dependent on childcare and summer programs and all those things that allow parents to go back to work if their employer was asking them to go back. Next. So to get to the recommendations, I think in summary, I want to make it easy for you guys to know that we spent a couple of weeks asking ourselves what we think was most important for our sector. And essentially, a couple of themes emerged pretty quickly. And what we really wanted the supervisors to think about was that more public dollars be spent on service delivery and less on bureaucracy. We thought that it was important, given the disproportionate impact on communities of color, that it was important that we prioritize those vulnerable communities and that we hear from organizations that are working in some of those pockets that aren't usually part of the conversation. And that maybe in this extraordinary time, there was an opportunity to incentivize partnerships, to improve coordination, maybe drive some creativity, and better align resources with greatest needs. So the buckets that kind of created was 5. The themes around contracting practices, reimbursement rates, better coordination between county departments, the COVID PPE procurement and access to capital to help pay for that. And we suggested resiliency hubs, which could be kind of a one-stop shop to make it easier for people to find the services they need and maybe find some efficiencies and savings for the service delivery side of the house. And I mentioned earlier this idea of incentivizing partnerships. That can be philanthropy, it can be corporate, it could be nonprofits, it could be government, but really to sort of see how in a kind of all hands on deck moment that we might think together. So the next slide. So once we submitted, all the working groups submitted their recommendations, as Wilma mentioned, a couple weeks ago to the Board of Supervisors. And once that document was submitted, then the supervisor said, now it's time to get to work and figure out which policy choices we are going to put some energy behind. We felt it was important that we start a campaign to remind the supervisors that all of these things are important, that we think it matters that they take this seriously if we're going to recover, both from the economic downturn and COVID, but also some of the historical issues that have been impacting communities. So the first phase of that campaign is to start some regular communication with the supervisors. And right now, Philanthropy, many of the foundations that you all know, are reviewing and signing on a letter of support that will be sent to the supervisors at the end of the week. And that covers kind of those three themes that are sort of broad in terms of looking at the contracting process, developing partnerships, and supporting safe service delivery in communities. So themes around better coordination, reasonable reimbursement. We wanted to keep it, that we wanted to start the drumbeat to support our recommendations. So we're really excited that Philanthropy is taking a look at this and going to be sending this letter of support later this week to our Board of Supervisors. Next slide. So we thought that it would be important to get some feedback from you. As Wilma mentioned, and as Jonathan and Winnie and many on the working group team know, we worked fast, knowing that we wanted to check in with you about how we fill out this story to make it most applicable for the supervisors to drive change, and for us as the nonprofit sector to really leverage our collective muscle and voice to ask for the changes that we know we need to have greater impact and reach. So I think we're going to ask a couple of questions in a poll to find out about how you feel about these recommendations. I know this was sort of fire hose moment, and we'll give you a chance to take have some more conversation about this, and we'll also put some things on the website so you can take a look at the list. So we had 2 questions we wanted to get your feedback on. So I think, Aaron, am I right that the first question will show up? Are these priorities important to you? Do you think that they're important? We just want a yes or a no to get a sense of, are we on the right track? Oh, I'll take that as close.
Yeah, still a few more people voting here, but general consensus seems to be yes.
That's great. We'll keep, it looks like there's a couple of people coming.
Yup. All right, I'm gonna end this poll and share the results. You can see that we're pretty much in agreement here. Question 2 then?
Question 2 would be great.
All right, let's pull up question 2. Question 2.
All right. So would you be interested in being involved in an outreach effort?
Everybody else, another couple seconds to vote, nearing critical completion here. All right, with about 60-ish% of people voting.
And to be fair, you don't know what you're being asked to do yet, so that's reasonable skepticism, I'd say. One of the things that you all should know is that today is our first opportunity to really hear from you about what are some examples of how some of these policies and practices have impacted your work. If you have ideas on organizations that should be part of this effort. And in terms of what the outreach might look like, we're still figuring that out. What we know for sure is that this needs to be bigger than this working group, that this is about the voice of the sector weighing in. And what we thought right now would be most important is a chance to go into breakout groups for a couple of minutes to get some concrete feedback from you about what you think. So it's we're going to take about 15 minutes. We have a couple of very specific questions that we'd like to get your advice and guidance on, and then we'll come back as a group, want to get some feedback, hear some of your thoughts, and then we'll be taking all of this, and then at the end making sure that we capture your thoughts and see who wants to be involved, and we'll keep communicating. So you don't have to commit right this minute to anything other than the next 15 minutes. We really want to hear from you. So Aaron, do you want to give them some direction on what that's going to take for the next 15 minutes?
Yes, so in just a minute, we're going to break up into breakout rooms of 5 to 6 people per room. No need to be shy. Please turn on your camera if you feel comfortable, but no need. I'm sharing in the chat right now a Google document that everybody should open. And the way it's going to work is that there's spaces for every breakout room we're going to have. So when you break up into your rooms, you should assign one person to be your note taker. And then just find the page with your breakout room number. If you're breakout room 12, go down to breakout room 12. And there are 3 questions that we're asking of everyone. One is to please provide examples of county programs that you are working on that should be replicated, things that are good that there should be more of. 2 is please to provide examples of any inefficiencies that you've encountered, and ideally as specific as possible, obstacles that we can highlight to the supervisors where people are getting stuck right now. And then 3, what organizations are working on these issues that we should be including in these efforts. So you can just type some notes into the Google document. When this is all done, we're gonna have this really great big document full of feedback. Please don't delete anybody else's content. This is a little bit of a trust exercise here. So we're gonna all have access to this document, and then just, find your spot and we'll take it from there.
Erin, will you remind everybody, please introduce yourselves once you get into the breakout rooms. This is a chance to connect with peers and share ideas, and we're really excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so in just a minute here, I'm setting up our final controls here. We're going to have 5 or 6 people in every room. There should be about 17 to 20 rooms or so. You'll be getting a countdown timer when the 15 minutes are up for everyone to come back in here. And we're really excited to see what you all put together. So with that, I will click the button and we'll see you when we're back from the breakout rooms. All right, welcome back, everybody. Everybody's still coming back, I think. Thank you all so much for participating in that breakout session. It was really cool to watch all of your answers populating in our Google Doc, and this is just a ton of great information for the working group to take back. Let's see, who's up now, Regina? Is it you or Ken? I forget.
Well, first of all, this is the free-for-all time. We wanted to hear what came out of your working discussions. We know that time went really fast, and we were asking you to think about, sort of what are the programs at the county that should be replicated, which ones not so much, what some of the challenges are, and who some of the organizations are that are working on all of these issues around contracting and coordination and reimbursement and even partnerships. And so we covered a lot of terrain very quickly. We just wanted to start to get a sense of, for small groups, for large groups, what's the same, what's different, and then who is working on this that we want to make sure we reach out and connect with. So just curious if some of you brave people, I know Joe, how about Joe and Acela, you want to jump in and we'll just start, see like what came out of the discussion?
Sure, I can jump in. I'll just share a couple highlights so that I won't take points that the other people may have from their conversation. But we uplifted in regards to replication, that contracts and grants that are simple to execute and implement, having the ones that cover full cost. We also shared in our group like the challenges in cash flow when these are reimbursable grants, and or if there is anything going on in government that would put a pause on payment, so that's something that's challenging for many organizations to be able to go after these contracts or grants around the reimbursements. And then that also replicable, that they support engagement activities, and that they should not prohibit organizations from advocating on other county policies or being able to critique the county if organizations that do policy and advocacy work have a critique of county programs and are advancing policy. So I'll stop there so that we don't take all the points that maybe were talked about in other groups.
Regina, I did want to kind of chime in on this question because I thought the group that I was able to join had just some really good insight. I think one of the questions that was shared was when they looked at this question about what are examples of programs that are working, I think the feedback was, what are those programs? Like, some of us aren't necessarily even aware of what county programs exist. And I think that kind of lifted some of the challenges in terms of communication and just awareness of what the county does versus what it doesn't for the nonprofit sector.
Right. Who wants to share next? Genevieve, you always want to share. You've always got good ideas.
I will share that we had a really great group, and I will start out by saying that the Westside Food Bank doesn't do a whole lot of county contracting, although we work with the county in many ways to facilitate CalFresh access and things like that, but we don't have contracts. So my partners really contributed a lot of really great information. And essentially, it's what we all know, is that there needs to be less cumbersome documentation and reporting requirements. There needs to be better communication. and also a better process for budgeting so that organizations can build into their budget the full cost of what it is going to take to do this kind of cumbersome reporting, and hopefully maybe not have to do so much of that. And then one thing that came up as a standout that was working really well is a task force that Westside Food Bank is actually part of, that I think is being coordinated really effectively by Lisa Arangua at LA County Public Health, really bringing together the food bank partners that have food, the places that have resources for transportation. She's brought in, Uber and DoorDash and different kinds of resources for delivery. The parks have gotten involved and donated space and staff. And being a part of that task force, what occurs to me is that she seems to have a lot of autonomy in bringing these partners together. And there isn't a lot, it doesn't seem to me anyway, looking from the outside, she might disagree, that there's anyone kind of breathing down her neck saying, oh, I don't know about that, or that she really seems to have free reign to say, oh, that person, we need to talk to that person, let's bring them in. Oh, there's someone at in a university in the Midwest that's willing to give us data. Let's talk to them. Let's bring in UCLA. Let's bring in USC. And so I think some of that autonomy and trust in letting people do what they do and bringing in partners, there seems to be a lack of that in some of the other county-run programs that are more established and really would benefit from having a little bit looser restrictions to create things, especially because things need to happen quickly in this current pandemic environment.
Right, those flexible dollars. Alicia, I'm curious, what came out of your group?
I think we had a note taker. He's probably going to be the better person to reflect.
Right.
Ned?
Sure, yeah, happy to help here. So one of the major themes was the value of breaking down silos. And often this was identified through co-location. Glad to see lots of heads nodding. That sounds like it's a winner. So, just recognizing that so many of the barriers have to do with the fact that people aren't talking to each other. We're not sort of finding ways that we can coordinate better. Though at the same time, we also realize that in some of the co-location opportunities that have arisen and that exist, it's often there are sort of restrictions or a lack of operational support to actually sort of get the co-location to happen. So the county should be promoting this, but also making sure it is giving the resources and support so that the agencies themselves aren't taking on the full burden of this new approach while not really having any additional resources to implement it.
Great, thank you. Who wants to put their hand up? Otherwise, I'll just start volunteering people. I know Bill always wants to talk. Hey, Bill Allen.
Hey, Regina. Genevieve did a great job reporting on the group that I was in, but just to reinforce, one of the points, many of us have created programs that the county has funded. They started with our organizations, the county became a partner, the county became a funder. And for some of us over time, the county has wanted to suddenly start changing those programs, instituting its own way of doing things, limiting where the services can be provided and how and when, and then requiring a lot of paperwork. And our team feels like we're less impactful in the communities of greatest need when we have to respond to so many changes and paperwork elements and are not being compensated for the full cost of delivering the program in the first place, which is delivered at a lower rate than it would cost the county to deliver it. So it was those same themes Genevieve talked about, which is trusting your nonprofit partners, trying to allow them to focus their resources on the people who need them the most in the community and not the paperwork process or the budgeting and contracting process or auditing process. So it was themes that Genevieve really articulated well, and I just wanted to support.
I'm curious on that note, you guys, if there are particular departments, and it sounds like there's some collaborations that are going on around the county where you feel like the design was kind of, to your point, Bill, maybe a shared early stage, deciding on a process and some deliverables, and that maybe there are some models that we want to highlight and replicate and encourage that are more efficient, more effective. So looking forward to all of your ideas. and suggestions. I'm curious. It's hard to tell what other groups want to speak up?
If there are any other themes that haven't been covered so far, you feel like that your group talked about something that we haven't discussed, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in. We'd love to hear from you.
I like that so many people are deep in thought. So Ken, do you want to sort of follow on with what the next steps are for folks?
Oh, you got to unmute yourself, Ken.
First, I'm going to represent. Come on, we got to get Dodger fever going, everybody. I'm showing colors today. Let's not pretend that we don't have a Dodger game coming up in 2 days. So that's my first thing, to let everybody make sure you watch on Thursday. Thanks. You know, the energy is great, and I was just talking to Aaron about we're all adjusting to this virtual way we do things, and breakout rooms are becoming a lot more normal, and people are getting in and doing stuff. So it's just wonderful to see. I'm here as a chair of the Children's Partnership, which is a children's advocacy group in the state of California, and I've been part of the task force. And you know, the thing that became perfectly clear is this. Bill, to your point, not only is the normal dynamic of funding being moved, it's accelerated in the downward spiral because of COVID. I mean, you're going to get to the point where there's a lot less money to go around for all the services. And folks, believe you me, elbows are going to fly. Once they come up with a number, people are going to go to the county, and it's going to be the sheriff, and it's going to be the fire, and it's going to be everybody, and they're going to be fighting for their dollars. Not only how to distribute them, but actual dollars. We are intending to take our recommendations and have a large body of nonprofits, big, small, left, right, north, south, east, west, advocate and show up virtually and otherwise to the extent that we can to say we need not only the dollars, but we need these changes to happen so that we can do our work. The county will pay attention if we show up, just like all the other organizations do. And so there's two things going on here. On the policy side, these areas that require a little bit more thought through, we need people to sign up and say, yeah, I'll help come up with hubs, these resiliency hubs, and think through the ideas to give it a little bit more thought. So we need people on working groups there to get the ideas more baked. But on things like we need immediate PPE, we need you to get rid of the bureaucratic stuff so we can get to work. We don't need more extensive thought. We need you to show up. And now, so the first part of showing up is we're going to direct you either, Aaron, are we prepared in the chat room? Okay, we're going to do it in the chat room, but also after we're going to send an email. What happened there?
Okay. Turning on the slide here.
We want you to go to a particular microsite that's being housed by the Center for Nonprofit Management and simply sign up. We need your name, email, phone, and your interest in either showing up, thank you, Aaron, showing up in the future and or potentially signing a letter or something in the future, literally good old-fashioned organizing. The second thing is we need to find out if you're interested in one of those policy areas where you want to lean in and give ideas. Third and final, this is one group. We have about, Aaron, 100 people, is that right? 100 or so, some of whom have already been here, so we know what's going on. We need to now have 3 or 4 or 5 more of these kinds of things, and we need you to get your networks to come to the next webinar, so that we can let people know more and more about what's happening. If we can get 1,000+ people on this database ready to show up, and I'm going to give you a date, put it on there, it's right there, Tuesday, September 1st is the first time the supervisors are going to meet and consider some of this stuff. If we had a bunch of people showing up at that meeting saying, I want you to pay attention to this task force and what it's recommending, that will register with them that we are organized and we're ready to fight for what we need. So again, we need you to sign up. We need you to get others to sign up, and we need you to participate if you can on September 1st. Usually the meetings are in the morning, and let people know that we mean business. Otherwise, it'll be great. We'll put the recommendations in, and then everybody, we won't have a force to be reckoned with. But the last thing I'll say is this has got to have legs and go forward. You can't do it September and then peter out. We need to keep this sort of sense of organization and keep the supervisors accountable to us and say that we're watching. We have great partners in the philanthropic organization as well, organizations. So this partnership should say to them that we're serious and we need help. That's what I would say. That's my rah-rah. But go to the chat room, or we're going to push it out, I think, afterwards via email so you have a link, and then get others. We haven't set the date for the next webinar, but we do need you guys to pay attention to that and get your circles to connect.
So thanks, Ken. You guys will notice that we also asked for, if you know it, the supervisorial district that you're in. We're just trying to collect information at this point. We're not going to be hounding you. We're just going to keep you informed. Obviously, we would love it at a certain point that you reach out to them if you have a relationship with them, because they are the deciders. But the goal for right now is that we learn a lot from you and make sure that we're on the right track and that as many as possible get involved.
Hey, Regina.
So we'll keep putting our stuff up on the site. All the links are there. And we'll keep communicating. I want to be careful about time. So Ken, why don't you close it up? And thank you guys for all that you've tried to do in the past hour. We know it was a lot.
Yeah, and thanks, Regina. I wanted to say one more thing. Look, I think the idea is to not see this as we're going after the supervisors. Instead, we're giving the supervisors cover when we show up, so that then when they have to tell the sheriffs, sorry, I got to give the money over here, I've got 3,000 people who are my constituents asking me to do it. You're giving them political cover to protect your dollars. And that's what we're after. That's what we need to do. We're not attacking anybody. And it's better to do that by supervisorial district. That's just how it works. So thank you all. Keep the energy. We will be in touch just to keep it warm, but please go and sign up.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken.
Go Dodgers.
Go Dodgers. Last thing that I just put in the chat and that we'll include in an email follow-up is a PDF of all of the actual recommendations that we sent to the board. We went through in this keynote just some of the highlights, but this is a document on the entire task force and all of the details of the recommendations that were submitted. So that's in the chat now. We'll also send that in an email follow-up. Wanted to make sure that was available to you. And again, thank you all so much for joining us. We'll wrap it there and hopefully see you next time.
Thanks all.